What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another powerful episode of Mind Over Masculinity. I'm your host, Avik, and today we are getting into something that quietly runs the whole show for a lot of men. Like the behavior, mindset, and those internal patterns that low key decides how you lead, how you love, and how you show up when nobody's clapping, right? So, because let's be honest, most guys are not bad at emotions. They are trained to override them. And then we call it a kind of discipline, leadership, or grit. But underneath, there's usually a loop, a trigger, a story, a default response. And that loop is shaping your decisions at the work, your relationship at home, and your mental health day by day. So, my guest today, please welcome Debbie Longo. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, she's a transformational coach who works with the leaders and the business owners to break destructive patterns and build high performance lives. So, she's direct, practical, and not here to kind of babysit the excuses. So, through her coaching and her show Behavioral Profit, she teaches that tiny behavioral shifts that create massive upgrades in productivity, clarity, confidence, and the overall well being. So, if you have ever said that, I don't know why I keep doing this, or maybe if you have been crushing it externally, but internally you are running on fumes, then this episode is for you. So, I'll not take much of your time. Let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Lovely, lovely. So, Debbie, regarding the default mode, like when you work with men in the leadership, right? So, what's the most common internal pattern that you see driving their stress and the decision making?
Well, the thing is with men have always been, now you could trace this since the beginning of time pretty much, right? They've always been a dominant figure, right? Over women or even over other men, right? So to me, men always try to dominate, right? And that is a human nature. That's not a bad thing, that's not something that they kind of develop. It's kind of more of a human nature, okay? And so as time went on, let's just say in the United States, I don't know how it is in other countries, but I know it's different in other countries. But as time went on in the United States,
Mm.
we started with, and this has been going on for, since the beginning, basically. We
Mhm.
started with the men dominate the women, right? And then the men run the household, different things like that. Well, then you had the 60s where women started to work.
Mm.
Okay, and then it was like women power, and women wanted to be equal to men. And this, like I said, is in the United States, right? I know this goes all over the world, right? But I think in every situation in any part of the world, a man always has some type of dominance over a woman. They have some type of control. Okay. Um, to me, I know it's really weird, but I think because men are bigger than women, that it has a lot to do with size. Like a man can overpower a woman, that type of thing. Okay. Now, it can be a bad thing or a good thing, right? But that's what we want to. We want to try to minimize that. Not something where I am trying to, accelerate that, right? I want to try to minimize that where I could be equal to a woman. Okay. I'm just using this as an example. There are millions of examples. All right. So if a man can be, you could think of this in your own way if you're a listener, right? If a man can be equal to a woman, then they could get along better. But the problem is when a man tries to dominate a woman or even another man, right? Any situation. or they try to control and manipulate. That's ultimately what's going to happen. And then they overpower the other person and then they become controlling. But the problem with that is then the other person tries to become controlling and you can't have two people control at the same time. So eventually one person falls and that never makes a good situation.
I agree. I agree. So, here, when that pattern shows up in the moment, then what is the fastest way to catch it before it hijacks the outcome? What is it?
I want to know when I ask a question like that, right? I want to know, is this person willing to even see that they can actually do this? So maybe I would mention it, casually mention it or something like that when I'm in a session or even talking to them or whatever the situation is. And then I would see if they're open to it or not. If they're open to even uh me talking just a little bit about it, just so they can open a door very, very little in order for me to even talk about it, maybe one sentence or two sentences. That's it. Because if they're open like that, what happens? One sentence turns into two, that turns into three, and then you start a whole conversation. But if I make a little bit, you know, things here and there, right, where I just casually mention it and they're not open to it at all, then it's not going to work. So basically, they have to really create the willingness because I can't do that for them. Nobody can do that for them. So that's really going to depend on the situation they're in, you know, how bad or bad, it wouldn't be good, but how bad the situation is, if they see there's a problem, if they wanna change it for whatever reason, there's a million reasons. So that's what I wanna know, and these are the type of questions that I ask, but they have to be subtle. They can't be like, they're in an interrogation. Okay, like you're drilling them. It can't be like that. It has to be done casual in a conversation, and they see then that this is a really good conversation because I'm not forcing anybody to do anything. It's completely up to them. Okay?
Mhm.
There are tons of people that want help. My help, other people's, other coaches help, whatever. Okay? But the thing is, oh, excuse me. The thing is that, I wanna make sure that they're comfortable enough and open enough to even listen to what I have to say. Now, hopefully, if they do, right, then they'll be ready to take the next step, which is doesn't always happen, okay? So we want them to take 2 and 3 steps before I actually start to work with them on this particular thing.
Mm, I agree. So, I mean, yeah, that's the wild part, but it's not that the guy is choosing chaos. He's choosing his default setting, and uh, the defaults don't change unless someone manually update them. So, uh, yeah. And regarding the emotions, right? A lot of men think that emotions are the distraction, but emotions are basically a kind of data. So, how do you help a man go from I'm fine to actually understanding what he's feeling without turning it into a kind of therapy marathon?
Right. So remember, we talked about, from the beginning, the man always tries to dominate, right? So when I was growing up, and this is true for a long time, even before that, my father always told me, don't show your feeling. If you don't cry,
Mm,
don't get upset, don't get angry, basically just hold everything in. Now, that's not the way that it really is meant to be, but that's how we interpret it today. But technically, that's not the way. So, um, if a man doesn't show his feelings, which, like I said, this is very, very common, right? What's going to happen is they're going to build the feelings, they're going to bury them deep inside of themselves. And they're going to eventually come out because they have to. So they could come out in sickness, and you could look this up on the internet. There's all kinds of proof. It's not a theory. Okay. There's all kinds of proof that this does exist. Okay. It could come out in sickness. The person could get cancer. Okay, the person could have a stroke. The person could have a heart attack. Okay,
Mm.
or it comes out, and this is all from stuff that's built down deep inside of them. We're talking about 30, 40 years. We're not talking about, 5 years of holding your feelings in. Okay. And then there could be diseases. There's, backlash where they hold it in and then they can't hold it in anymore. And then they start abusing their family.
Right.
Okay. So how do I deal with that? So again, I want to be able to express to them that
Hmm.
I have a feeling that this could be the problem. I'm not really sure, even though I know. Okay. I'm not really sure, but this is a possibility that this could be something to maybe look into, or maybe if I could mention it, if you're going to be comfortable with that. Something like
Mm.
that. Very, very, very simple, easy baby steps. And then they say, okay. And then I say it. And then I say it, and then I say, "Are you comfortable with me saying something else about that?" And then they say, "Okay." And then I say a second sentence. So it has to be like that, very, very gradual, because eventually they're going to say, "Hold on, don't talk about this anymore. This is not me. I don't agree, and I'm not willing to do this." Eventually they're going to say it because they're not going to go all the way through in the first time. It's not happening. Okay, and if
Right.
you do that, then you're really like, unusual person, which is a great thing, but it's, our mind is always going back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I agree. And also, like, in leadership, especially for men, uh, what suggestion you'd like to give to the listeners today? Yeah.
Try to minimize, and again, this you would need help from somebody with this. Try to minimize the control and manipulation, and don't think that you are the whole entire company, because other people work there and you don't make the company. Okay. And you don't control every single thing that everybody does. It's all the people, all the employees, all the executives, everybody that works for your company makes the company. And they literally write your paycheck. Okay. So if you abuse them, or you try to control and manipulate them, and you yell at them, or whatever you're doing, then, and you think that's normal, then eventually people are going to leave, and who knows what's going to happen. You might not have a paycheck, or your company might even go out of business, or you might get fired. Who knows what's going to happen, because the result is not going to be good. And this is why I do this coaching, any type of coaching, business, personal, men, women, it doesn't matter. Everybody, every human being, it doesn't matter where you live. Okay. I know the cultures and stuff are different, in other countries, but the bottom line is everybody has behavior. Okay. Everybody has this type of behavior. Okay, it might be minimum with some people a lot, So I want to help the people that have this problem. Okay, if they don't have a problem and they're doing fine, then there's no reason for me to help them. There's no reason for me to talk to them, because I'm not going to say, "Hi, how you doing?" It doesn't, there's no reason for that. All right. So I want the people who are really having issues. And if you can see that, or you could even attempt to see anything like that, or if
Mhm.
your business is not doing good, or whatever the situation is, that would be the advice I would give, would be to try to see it as much as you can, and then seek help somehow. Me, a life coach, which of course is what I recommend, therapy, anything like that. Anything where you could get out your feelings and talk to a professional, not your friend. Okay. If you want to talk to your friend to vent, but that's not going to help you solve your problem. Okay. You need to talk to a professional or get some type of professional help
Mm.
where that is going to help you and that will help change you. And then your life will get better. Because if you feel like, if you really know that your life is miserable and you
Mm.
want to continue to live a miserable life, then that's fine with me. You know what I mean? That doesn't have anything to do with me, you know? But I'm not interested in people like that. I want people that are going to really want to change.
Hmm. I agree. Lovely. So, dear listeners, before you bounce, here's one mini challenge for this week. Pick up one recurring moment where you usually react on the autopilot, a stressful email, or maybe a kind of disagreement with your partner, uh, a kid pushing your buttons, and a team member messing up, whatever, right? So do this one thing, pause for 3 seconds and ask, like, what am I trying to protect right now? Not that what's annoying me, not like who's wrong, what are you protecting? Your ego, your control, and your image, your comfort, your fear of being seen. So that one question can interrupt in the loop, and that's where real change starts. So, Debbie, if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the great medium to connect?
Yes, that was very good. I agree. I have a
Mhm.
website, Life in Bloom NY,
Mhm.
LifeInBloomNY, and for New York. And I have my contact information on there, and I'm also on LinkedIn. So I'm on all social media, but LinkedIn is usually what I use. So that's where they could contact me. I have my phone number there. I'm very accessible to, just to talk or send me an email or a text message or whatever. Okay, some type of communication. And that
Mm.
will be the start of what your new journey will look like.
Amazing. So, the listeners, I'll put all the links into the show notes for easy reference. And if this episode hits, then share it with one man you care about who's carrying a lot and pretending it's nothing. And if you're ready to lead better, love better, live with more clarity, keep coming back. We are building a new standard here. So, with this hope, until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and keep focusing your life. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.